I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delighted to welcome back one of our favorite guests to the show, Alan Scher. He is a multifaceted individual whose life experiences paint a rich tapestry of both challenge and triumph. Born in Sunderland, a town marked by its historical significance in World War II and later its commercial achievements, Alan navigated through the unpredictabilities of life, drawing upon the dichotomies of reward and satisfaction. From his early encounters with the world of law and politics to his eventual realization about the essence of good management, Alan's journey is riddled with learning and evolution. The backdrop of his life story incorporates an intriguing blend of family anecdotes, early brushes with law and politics, and revelations in business. With a legacy rooted in both professional excellence and personal fulfillment, his life offers a compelling lens into the broader currents of the 20th and 21st century. We are delighted to have this Renaissance man join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Alan, that was a mouthful, but you've accomplished a lot in your 90 years. It's hard to believe you're 90 years old. You look about 15 or 20 years younger, I'd say. And now your latest accomplishment is this fall, you'll have 2 books on exhibition in Frankfurt. Tell us a little bit about that. This is quite an honor.
Right. Well, never mind the honor. It's just the fact that I've got these 2 books here. One is this book, which is Death of a Nightingale. And that book really arises out of my retirement. And this book, which is my management letters, and this book arises out of my working life. And I have to tell you that when I was young, that was not what I planned for myself in any way at all. It is quite startling. And I will just show you a picture of where my life started out, because this was in Sunderland. And this picture is the family furniture shop.
Wonderful.
Now, that is the family furniture shop that I looked at in 1950, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I wanted to be a lawyer. Now, one of the reasons I didn't want anything to do with it was because it had been a very good site. But unfortunately, there was a very famous hall called the Victoria Hall in Sunderland. The Halle Orchestra once played at it, so it must have been a significant hall. We were right next door to it. And in the war, in the Blitz, this is what happened to it.
Wow.
It was totally destroyed.
Yeah.
And the fact is that the Mowbray buildings, which I've just shown you, which was once a good site, turned out to be a very bad site. And I want to get away from it. Well, that's where it all started. Now, I'll jump right to the end, just so you see what I'm getting at. The fact is that today, that same company trading under the same name is now this.
Wonderful.
Now, it's now got a turnover of £300 million and satisfied customers, and it's amazing. And I just can't understand. Well, I can understand how it happened. Now, I didn't stay with it all the way, but I was actually, as luck had it, I was involved with its formation and its growth in the northeast of England. And that's why I have written this book, Management Letters, because I saw what a difference good management makes to anything. The fact is that when I came back to Sunderland when my father was ill and my mother was minding the show. And I tried to run the business myself. I tried to be a manager. Well, a friend of mine who was in business, he said, "You're not a manager, you're an owner." And he was absolutely right. And he, in fact, found for me the manager who developed that business. And together, with my mother, we developed it in the northeast of England. And that's when I learned about management. And that's when I learned what good management was about. That retail is detail, it's professional marketing. If you can't buy well, you can't sell well. But the other thing I learned was the good side of capitalism. People sneer at capitalism, but when capitalism works, everybody wins.
Yeah.
Because in this instance, that's precisely what happened. everybody in the company benefited. The people who bought and they got satisfied customers, they all benefit. They wouldn't come back if they hadn't. And the people invested in it, everybody benefited. The tax man benefited from it. Everybody benefited from it. And even after I retired, it had a hiccup, but even then it recovered itself. And so capitalism works, and you only need to have it working properly for it to work well for everybody. And that's the secret of capitalism. Socialism, unfortunately, doesn't work. And people like to believe that it does. But I've now, can I share something with you?
Sure.
This is interesting, I think, taking a wider view of things. I've got myself a little toy or tool, call it what you will. I think this is a gift from God, this thing is. Now, believe it or not, it cost me in Amazon less than £10. Now, I think that actually the box is worth more than £10. Now, what I've got inside it, I'll keep you waiting.
Suspense builds.
What I've got inside it is a very beautiful telescope.
Wow, that's very cool.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, very nice.
Now, trying to sum up a lot of things that I'm saying in both books can be summed up using this little tool.
Okay.
I want to explain it in this way, that when I see life, I look at it this way round, and it brings people up close.
Yeah.
And when I see people up close, I realize the importance that everybody can contribute to the world and to their own lives, and the satisfaction they can get if they do contribute. There's the two elements in your life. One is the money side, you can't ignore that, and the other is the satisfaction side. And what I see are individual people, and I've got a lot of them there that I've met in my life, and they're all doing good things, and they're all getting a reward and satisfaction. And that's when I look at life this way. But when I turn it this way, everybody looks very small.
Yeah.
And they all look equal. They're not equal, but they look equal. and they assume that they're all equal when they're not equal. They're different.
Exactly. They're equal under the eyes of the law, but they're not equal in abilities.
They're not equal at all. They're different, and it's the difference that that matters. Now, you see, that's the point about my two books, because what happened was when I retired, I belonged to the Rotary Club of Sunderland. Now, that's got a nice big bell, Rotary Club of Sunderland, right?
You got it. Yep.
Now, the last thing that occurred to me when I joined the Rotary Club of Sunderland was that it was going to change my life. Fact is that it did, and it has, and I'll explain. The Rotary Club of Sunderland is service before self. You see, so this is where you get your satisfaction in life, and doing things that help other people. And I met there a guy called Fredwin Haynes, and he was the head teacher of a special school in Sunderland called the Barbara Priestman School. And he asked me, first of all, to be a governor, and then chair of governors. And it was the most magnificent school. I didn't really do anything to make it so. It just had a dedicated teachers and carers. It's catered for kids with a physical disability and a learning difficulty, the two together. And so it had a hydrotherapy pool, it had physios, it had nurses, and so on. And the consultants used actually to visit the school to see the patients and the staff and the parents. It's remarkable that way around. Anyway, the flavor of the times is inclusion. And now inclusion is got up by people who look at the world this way, the wrong way, because they only, and I'll show you exactly why. I'll give you a quote in a minute or two, which illustrate what I'm saying. They don't see kids themselves in this situation. They just see why they should all be educated together with everybody else, don't segregate them. And they also see somehow that it would be better for everybody, better for the kids and so on, if that happens. And they think that all they've got to do is to give the kids a right to go to the school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've got here in my book here, whoops, right, got
Yep.
it?
Death of a Nightingale, 2022.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I've got a quote from a guy who was an academic, a professor, I won't name him. We need, for many children at least, to abandon the individualized approach that has become the shibboleth of special needs education. Wow.
Yeah.
Abandon the individualized approach. That's ridiculous.
Right.
But that's what they do, and that's what they did, and that's what they subscribe to.
Right.
Then he goes on to say, costs and outcomes for pupils with moderate learning difficulties. It's important to be clear, therefore, that an analysis of costs and outcomes cannot properly be used to determine the question of rights. In other words, you give the kids rights because they should have rights,
right.
but you don't have to consider at all the costs or the outcomes. Well, it's crazy because when you really think about it, because part of the costs of employing a whole raft of non-teaching teachers, right? And the second thing is that you don't, the outcomes, bullying, treating kids with Ritalin, and God knows what else, because they're treating their disorder because they're not properly being catered for, which when they were being catered for in the special school. Now, let's stay with my story. The position was that the local authority, pursuing the national policy, wanted to close that school, and they chose their moment because the head teacher was retiring, and they called a meeting of the parents, and I went to it along with the parent governor, and the director of education said, "We've got good news for you. We're going to close you down." And I said to a parent governor, "Well, ask for a vote." So she asked for a vote. Not one single hand went up in favor of that happening. Well, you might think that would have solved it, but it didn't, because they just pressed on regardless, as though the vote hadn't happened. And so I was able then to make a contribution, because I helped the parents campaign to keep the school open. And I said, don't have a petition, collect reasoned objections to closure. Now, it was a very good school, and it had a steel drum band, which used to go around everywhere. And it had a lot of loyal friends. And the local paper, the Sunderland Echo, ran full-page spreads and front-page headlines saying, "Save the school." Well, they got 14,000 reasoned objections to closure, which is startling. And they presented this to the Labour government at the time, and the government said, well, you better not close the school. So the school was saved, and that was fine. The only trouble is that a lot of other schools were being closed under the same logic, and some of them good ones. And this provoked me to write my play, Death of a Nightingale, which is at the heart of this book, Death of a Nightingale, the earlier editions of it anyway. So that's where that one got me. Now, the story has changed and developed since then in a number of disconcerting ways. Although the school was preserved, and in one sense the battle was won, if you look at that school today, it is now not an all-age school for kids with physical disabilities and learning difficulties. It is a school from 11 to 19 for autistic kids. So it's still doing good work. But I believe that on the grapevine, that the swimming pool or the therapy pool isn't necessary. And the whole thing is a different school. So, there you are. You take it as you find it. And I'm not very happy with that.
Yeah.
The other thing which is relevant is that when I try to print in the new edition of my book the photographs in the Sunderland Echo, the current editor of the Echo, under different ownership, says that I may not publish them because he's got the right of copyright, and I find that appalling. But I just record it, and I record it in the book because it's a sign of the times. But the other thing that's happened, and it's really why I have I'm republishing the book, it suddenly occurred to me that what I was writing about, and that was kids with special needs, actually applied to a lot more kids.
Hmm.
Because, like most people, I subscribe to the view, well, equality of opportunity to go to a university is what education is all about. But it isn't for the people who don't want to go to university or who can't go to university, who
Right.
don't want a loan on their back. It's got to be just as much as for the kids with special needs. And then when I read, as I do, about all the disturbances in school, the absenteeism, it suddenly occurs to me that the reason all of this is going on, and the reason, I mean, the latest episode here is the kids who are taking their own life, and the three dads who went around to focus attention on what is apparently the biggest killer of young people today, and that is suicide.
Hmm.
Um, that that in fact this is a serious problem here. It's not just I'm not just writing about kids with special needs. I'm writing about all the kids who should, instead of getting the exam results that they are doing in the UK at the moment and say, "Oh God, we've failed. We ought to have a resit or something," they ought to have been able to take an exam that they can pass with flying colours and take that to their job, and
Yeah.
that in fact, really, there should be twin track policy. There should not just be a single track, that one size education does not fit all. And so that's really where this has come from, that I feel, and I'm not alone in this, because there are others who are inside the profession who've been saying the same thing as I'm saying. Um, and that's the compulsion, if you like, to say what I'm saying on that in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems that, there's one size fits all approach to education or treating people in general in this manner, whether it's business or a school or what have you, kind of is dehumanizing because
Well,
we all have different abilities, right?
yes, well, that's part of it. You see, they applied elsewhere. You see, the left is forever pointing at the right. Well, the right's got its own problems, heaven knows,
Yeah.
but the left is part of the problem. I mean, for a moment, for example, in the UK, you've got doctors and nurses striking.
Right.
Now, all right, it may well be they've got a legitimate cause, but here what about their duty to their patients, for heaven's
Right.
sake? And the fact is that when you look at strikes, when has strike solved anything in the UK? You look at the car industry, used to be UK owned, no
Right.
longer UK owned. You look at the coal industry, strikes there. You look at engineering, look at Nissan. When Nissan came to Sunderland, they said, we only want one union, and there were no strikes. I mean, strikes don't help. And what
Right.
I'm really, this really goes to my other book, which is really management letters, you see.
Yeah.
Because what I'm trying to say here is that I got it wrong, and I think a lot of other people made the same mistake that I made. I thought that what I liked was what other people would like.
Mm.
You see, I go to a furniture exhibition, I'd see a suite of furniture, I wouldn't worry about the price of it. I think, oh, I like that. I'll try and sell it.
Right.
Well, now my Mike Brown goes there. He doesn't approach it that way at all. He looks at it professionally, and he says, "Is this a suite that not that they're going to buy, but they might buy? I'm going to give them a choice, and I'll give them a choice, and I'll try and get the best price from my supplier, so I can give the best price. If I sell 100 of them, maybe he'll give me a better price to buy at, and then I can reduce the price to the customer, and so it works out. But what I'm saying is that there's a big mistake that especially young people make, and that is that you think that what's right for you is right for everybody, but it's not. It's not at all right, and that's again something I want to try to tell people, that they've got to realize the world is not like that.
Yeah.
And you see, I can widen it out in a big way now, because if you take the planet, you see, everybody today wants to save the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't blame them, because it's not going to affect me. I don't think at the age of 90, I don't think it's really going to affect me very much. But I feel for the young people who are legitimately very worried about the planet.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people are very worried about the planet, and quite rightly so. because it's burning up and it's terrible. And if you believe in the Almighty, He's sending a few warning messages to people that they better do something about it. So that, but some people think, oh, we'll solve the problem. So they say, well, if we could get everybody to ride a bike, that'll do it. And so you get some people in my part of the world that say, yeah, well, let's make sure that everybody rides a bike and doesn't ride in a car. And that's what they do. And literally what they do. And and it's not just in the UK. They have cycle lanes where there are no cyclists because they think that people, once the cycle lanes are there, well, obviously to save the planet, everybody will switch to them and it's healthier to ride on a bike. I rode on a bike. It almost killed me when I rode on a bike because I came down a Hambledon Hill and my bike wheel caught in a tram track. But anyway, that's history, if you like. But and I lost a very good friend actually through cycling. So it's dangerous. Cycling is dangerous anyway, especially where there's a lot of traffic around. But putting cycle lanes, sometimes where there are no cyclists, or sometimes where it stops ambulances getting to their patients or getting their patients to hospital, doesn't make any sense at all. But you see, that's one end of the spectrum. There's another end of the spectrum, and I just open it up now. I do it very tentatively because this is not my scene. I mean, I hear that there are some powerful people in America who think that they can save the planet, and they want to do it by controlling what people do.
Right.
Exactly. They think that if you have got a digital dollar, you can control what people do. Now, I've got to tell you that is not good news for America, and it's not good news for anybody, because you can't have people telling you what to do because they may not get it right.
Right.
And when it comes to energy today, the world will solve itself as I read it, as I listen to it. I mean, there are sources of energy that are there, apart from the ones that we've got now, that are clean energy, that will solve it. But you've got to let it happen. You haven't got to be clever for the world. And so this is the trouble with the left. They try to be too clever. They give people rights without necessarily working out the advantages and disadvantages and whether the rights will give any benefit at all. Exactly. They give rights to kids and they don't see where there is a clash of rights that they need to do anything about it. Because what I've come across is a situation where, yes, there are rights, but there are other people's rights, you see. I mean, going back to the hospital situation, which I talked about, right, the doctors and the nurses have got their rights. They surely have. And I wouldn't be here today without them. I can tell you that for sure. So don't think I'm not grateful to them, because I am intensely grateful to them. But nevertheless, and I read, when I was in hospital, I felt it very, very much recently that the patients have their rights, and that when doctors and nurses go on strike, it delays everything, makes, if there are problems before, they're going to be much worse afterwards. So they're not doing anybody any favors. It's not making management any easier. And what I'm trying to say in my management book is that you can't just be a manager today. You've got to be a good manager.
Right.
And what it was, I mean, in many ways, it's rather startling that I can say this, but I was able to write a letter a week. This was my parting gift to my company. I was able to write a letter a week for a year to my staff. And there it is. That's 52 letters. And the last two letters, one is on Kaizen, and the other is on business ethics. Now, I guess a lot of people don't know the meaning of the word Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese word. It means continuous improvement. And I think, especially when it comes to the health service, the people who designed the health service in 1948 haven't a clue about continuous improvement in the UK. I mean, the fact is that the NHS is a victim of its own success because people live much longer. And in 1948, there was no need for social care. People didn't need care homes because they didn't live long enough. And that's why social care is not within the health system. The other thing is that in 1948, people didn't have an opportunity to influence their own health in all sorts of ways, even with a smart watch. And people should be encouraged to take an interest in their own health and that sort of thing. And you need to bring the thing up to date. Insurance enables you to do it, but of course people don't like insurance, but it works in many countries. But this country is dead scared of it. Well, it's ridiculous. So you see where I'm coming from. That what's important is not dogma or anything like that. What's important is management and good management, sensitive management, not, as I was, incompetent management. And I was absolutely stupid. And I think today a lot of people are absolutely stupid, but that's by the way. But there are also some sensible people around. In Rotary, one of my very good friends in Rotary was a hospital manager, and he was highly respected as a hospital manager. So I don't want to I mean, we had the most terrible story this week about Helen Letby, which may have reached you. This is the nurse who was killing and was allowed to do so for too long. But this is the cover-up side in society, which is the other side that upsets me today. You see that you don't like to say anything that cover. You like to protect it. Well, it's I'll protect your back and you'll protect mine is the sort of goes on today, and that doesn't help democracy. It doesn't help anything, and so that's another thing that sort of gets me going again. And I suppose, if you like, why am I so feisty? Well, it's partly because of my mother. She was feisty, and I suspect that's what I've inherited. But there's the other bit of me, which is my father, because my father was he was a more placid man. Although he fought in the British Army, he was with Allenby in the First World War. So he obviously was a fighter as well, but not in my life, not while I knew him. He was just a nice guy, and that's why the other part of me, you see, that I like my father. I much prefer the gentle me, the caring me, to the feisty me. I mean, the feisty me comes out because of my mother, but I put it back in the box again whenever I can. But this is what you've got here. You've got a peculiar animal in front of you today, and I'm just sort of hope. Well, I see the other thing which I should mention is my dear wife, because I've been very, very fortunate in my wife, because you see, I used to think that the world was a rational place when I was at university and when I was involved with the law. The law always thinks the world is rational and judges it rationally. Well, the world is not rational. Right. And my wife was actually, I got 1 degree at Oxford, and I must tell you this, I'm sorry about my old university, but I took not just 1 Roman law paper, 2 Roman law papers. I must have been out of my mind. Absolutely, I had 2 Roman law papers and none. And it's only when I got to America that I realized that you only needed lawyers. You didn't need barristers and solicitors. But we never even studied comparative law. And then I tell you, my tutor, I mean, he was not much older than me. And really, well, he had a great love of Wordsworth. And he became professor of poetry. So he may have known a bit about the law, but not an awful lot. And so I didn't really get as much law as I might have done out of Oxford anyway. I don't want to be too cruel, but there you are. It wasn't very good for me personally. It was very good for some of my contemporaries. So I don't want to speak too ill of it, because some of them became judges and high court judges and goodness knows what else. So I don't want to be too unkind. I'm just speaking very personally here, and I'm not well disposed towards my old college in this respect. I mean, it's a beautiful college, the oldest quadrangle in Oxford, Merton. And I love my time there, so don't want to be too cruel to it. But I don't. But the truth is that the academia has not really adjusted to change in the way that it ought. And it needs to be much more with the world than above it and outside it and beyond it, which is, and I say very often, that's how it looks at the world again, the wrong way round. And, I could say more about that. I better not. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, I better pause for breath.
Exactly. Well, you've touched upon a lot of interesting subjects. You know, the subtitle of your book is Pursuit of Excellence, Management Letters in Pursuit of Excellence. And I think that's your whole point here, is that whether it's a government entity, whether it's a school, whether it's a business, whether it's in your home life, you should be striving for excellence. That should be the goal. We hear a lot about inclusion and diversity, and those are great principles and concepts, so long as they can bring us to excellence. And I think if we look at the world like a lot of great thinkers have said we should, such as Martin Luther King, we have a colorblind look at the world, a gender blind look at the world, appreciate the differences in people, the differences of ability in people, we will get a better society, better healthcare, better education, and stop these one-size-fits-all approaches. I hope I've kind of summarized a little bit of what you said today.
I just, the other side of it, which is worth mentioning, is that the opposite of excellence is mediocrity.
Exactly.
And you know, there's no virtue in mediocrity. And the other thing is this, that I don't think people realize that equality is actually a mischief word. Mm-hmm. And I've got this saying that we're equal only sometimes.
Right.
We're unequal most times, and we're different always. And the fact is that if you aspire to be excellent, you're actually aspiring to be unequal. I mean, you are. And there's nothing wrong with it either. Exactly. And you should be rewarded for it as well. There's nothing wrong in having a reward for excellence too. So the bias should not be towards equality for everything. The bias in society should be to excellence. And then let society look after itself in that case, rather than try to organize it your way, which is a dangerous way, and thinking that people should be what you think is right when they've got a different view of it. And it's, I was just thinking, actually, I had a mischievous thought. Can you allow me a mischievous thought?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, this is really a mischievous thought. I printed this thought up for you today.
Okay.
Right, are you ready for it?
Yes, sir.
Right, well, you've got the Statue of Liberty, right?
Yep.
This is what you may end up with.
Oh, good God. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. We don't want that overlooking New York City harbor.
Well, all I'm saying is that I have unfortunately seen the blindness of the law.
Yeah.
And it saddens me to say that, but I have seen it. And it's not good news either, because you depend upon the law. Mm-hmm. The law is very important to society. What saddens me at the moment is the anarchy that is going around. The people are making their own rules up as they go and think that because they're equal, their view is as good as anybody else's, when it jolly well isn't as good as anybody else's. Views are all relative, and people haven't got the right to dictate to other people. You know, the people who glue themselves to the pavement and stop others getting to work. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just they think they're doing a great job. They're not. It's anarchy. And you see, and the law shouldn't just allow that to happen easily. It shouldn't. It should challenge it. So there's a lot of people need to go back to the drawing board of it and look at democracy again. Agreed. And the key word in democracy is accountability, that you give people power to get on with things and manage things. And if they're no really good, you kick them out. And you don't try and tell them what to do while they're doing it. Well, you can advise them, but you don't get all mad under the collar and so on and go on strike, because that doesn't help anybody anyway. And don't, but I chunter now sometimes. That's the prerogative of when getting to my age, you chunter and rant on a bit.
Well, you've touched upon a lot today. We live in a society now, I know here in the United States, we're no longer prosecuting certain criminals for crimes that they consider minor. Somebody could go into A. Share and Sons and steal the furniture nowadays and not be prosecuted because it's a victimless crime. It's shoplifting. So it's a crazy world we're living in, where former presidents of the United States are prosecuted while crime runs rampant in the streets. So hopefully your word gets out there. You have written 2 amazing books. One is called Management Letters in Pursuit of Excellence. The other is called Death of a Nightingale. They tell a story and show your viewpoints on life and excellence and making this society a better place. Alan, before we leave you today, anything you'd like to share with the audience?
No, I think I've said most of the things I hoped I'd be able to say. And I wish, all I do is I wish the world well. And I think,
Exactly.
and the other thing is that give the world a chance, because I believe that I've lived through the 20th century, and heaven knows there've been a lot of awful things there. Don't ever forget what happened in Eastern Europe. If you think about socialism, just don't forget about Eastern Europe and the loss of 100 years. And don't forget why people had to scramble over the Berlin Wall when it was brought down. Don't forget that under any circumstances. Socialism is a dangerous, dangerous thing. Capitalism can be also very dangerous, but it's up to you to manage it properly.
Exactly. And socialism is basically communism light. Let's face it. When I
Well,
was a kid in school, I could never understand the difference between socialism and communism when the teacher explained it. I'm like, well, they're both the same thing, right? And they
yeah,
kind of
all I
are.
know is that it can work, but you've got to make sure that it's made to work properly. It won't work. I mean, I think that the role of the left, I can sum it up very quickly. The role of the left is to provide the conscience for capitalism, not to substitute something else for it. That's what the role of the left is. Capitalism certainly needs a conscience, and that, especially with AI coming in, and it's going to need a conscience to keep fair play around. Fair play is what you need, not equality. Fair play is the target, I think. Not easy, but that's to be the target, and not equality. That's the
Agreed.
final thought.
Agreed. Alan, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight. We'll let that be your last word because it's a strong word.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
much.
And it's a joy to be with you again. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight. And Alan, we can do a little cheers here. You've got your cup. I've
Yeah,
got my cup.
I've got my cup. Yeah, that's right. Harmony.
Harmony, happiness, magnificence, let the sun shine. Those are all great things.
And moderation in all things, especially moderation.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks so much.
Hello, book lovers. Not in my wildest dreams did I expect this at the age of 90. Meet the team. Esther Share, that little lady in size 2 shoes, the rock on which the company stood. Mike Brown, the manager par excellence. And me, that unexpected 20-year entrepreneur. And Mowbray Buildings, that demonstrates that life is really what you make it. On the 15th of April 1941, a good location became a bad one. A parachute bomb targeting Sunderland shipyards destroyed the Victoria Hall, and Mowbray Buildings lost more than just its windows. And this is how I remember it in the 1950s. My grandfather's name above the door. I didn't want to know about it. I wanted to be a lawyer. But 8 years later, I came back. And then I bought furniture that I liked without thinking about the price. Now, Mike, he, in fact, was a pro. And you have to buy well in order to sell well. And when retailers get it right, everybody wins. And for 20 years, I see the bigger picture, and life is rewarding on the margins. Sometimes it's where you get your luck from, and there's plenty to do. And Ros, my wife, inspires my sense of purpose. And here is the company as it is today, and clearly with many satisfied customers. Excellence appreciated. And this was my parting gift. Note the last two letters. Kaizen, Japanese for continuous improvement. And business ethics. That's where the future comes from, both of them. Leslie Sheraton, my guardian angel.
I distributed the letters out to managers each week. They were eagerly awaited and there was always plenty of feedback.
And
each one of Alan's letters is a timeless gem and is as relevant today as they ever were.
Gordon, a good friend to this day.
Inspiration, knowledge, achievement, success. That's what this book brought to me. Read it, you won't be disappointed.
And some lines from my play Death of a Nightingale. If you're afraid of failure, you'll win nothing in life. And here are the secrets to your success. Say yes to life and be the best you can be. And here are some of the tools to do the job.